Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started. Today, we're digging into something pretty specific. A big set of practice questions all about flying drones or RPAS here in Canada.
Right. We're basically taking all that info and boiling it down to the essentials for you.
Exactly. We want to save you time, cut through the jargon, and just deliver those aha moments, whether you're doing this for work or maybe you're just curious.
Yeah, the goal is efficient understanding, getting you the core insights without getting totally bogged down in details.
So our mission today, pull out the really actionable stuff from these questions. We're talking safety, rules, best practices for flying drones in Canada.
And the range here is pretty wide, actually. We'll hit on checking out your flying spot site assessment.
What to do if things go wrong, like a flyaway or some kind of malfunction.
How to store your gear properly, understanding NOTAMs, and dealing with Navy Canada.
Emergency landings, hopefully you never need it, but good to know.
Flight planning, checklists, looking after your batteries, that's a big one.
Avoiding planes and helicopters, obviously.
Launch and recovery techniques, keeping that visual line of sight.
Situational awareness, losing the control link.
And finally, logging everything, flights and maintenance. It's quite a list.
Okay, let's jump in. Where do we start? Site assessment seems like the logical first step.
Definitely. Before you even think about flying, you got to know your environment.
Right. And some rules are pretty straightforward, aren't they? Like the maximum height?
Yep. 122 meters, which is 400 feet, above ground level AGL. That's the absolute ceiling for basic operations.
And you need to be able to see, right? Minimum visibility.
3 statute miles. Makes sense. If you can't see far, you can't see your drone.
And there are tools for checking weather, like NAV drone or WeatherCan.
Yeah, those are great for getting current conditions. Super important pre-flight check.
But it's not just about the weather and altitude rules. Why the big focus on checking for things like trees, towers seems obvious.
Well, it is obvious, but it's critical. There are physical collision risks. Hit one, and you could lose your drone, or worse.
Okay, fair point. And that AGL thing, above ground level, it's not just 122 meters above where I'm standing.
Exactly. That's a key point. It's 122 meters above the ground, directly underneath the drone. So if you're on a hill flying over a valley...
I need to measure from the valley floor, not the hilltop where I launched.
Precisely. Easy mistake to make if you're not careful.
Okay, that's clear. Now, what about less obvious things? Flying near, say, a big metal shed or a concrete building, can that cause problems?
Oh, absolutely. Large metal or reinforced concrete structures can really mess with your drone's GPS and compass.
How so?
Well, the GPS relies on satellite signals, right? Metal can block or reflect those signals, leading to inaccurate positioning. And the compass uses the Earth's magnetic field.
Which metal can distort.
Exactly. It throws off the drone's sense of direction. And then there's the simple physical stuff. What if there's a big hill or building between you and the drone?
Then I can't see it. Violates VLOS.
Correct. Visual line of sight, VLOS, is fundamental. You got to keep eyes on the drone.
In temperature, we always think wind and rain, but why is temperature important for the site assessment?
Batteries, especially LiPo batteries. Cold temperatures, they drastically reduce performance. The battery voltage drops faster, less flight time.
And too hot is bad too.
Yeah, overheating risk. And speaking of looking up, clouds matter too, right?
Oh, yeah. How close can you get?
You need to say at least 30 meters. It's about 100 feet. Vertically below any clouds.
Got it. Okay, let's get a bit more specific. Flying in a valley seems sheltered, but are there hidden traps?
There can be. The surrounding hillsides can actually degrade both your GPS and your radio control signals. They physically block the signals.
Which could affect return to home.
Definitely. If the drone can't get a solid GPS lock or talk to the controller properly, RTH might fail or behave unpredictably.
And wind, even if it feels calm where I am.
Yeah, wind can be much stronger, just a bit higher up, or around terrain features. It's deceptive.
So for a typical basic drone, what kind of wind speed is a definite maybe don't fly today?
Generally, winds gusting over 30 kilometers per hour, about 19 miles per hour. That's getting risky for most basic RPAS. Control becomes difficult.
And the launch spot itself, it's not just about open space, is it? The ground matters.
Big time. You need a surface that's level, dry, and stable. Doesn't matter if it's grass, sand, pavement.
Uneven ground could cause a tip over on takeoff.
Exactly. Damaged props, maybe worse. Also, before you launch, scan for animals. Livestock, wildlife, you need to avoid disturbing them. That's a regulatory thing.
So obstacle isn't just a casual word here. It has a specific meaning for drone pilots.
Pretty much, yeah. An obstacle is anything in your flight area, trees, power lines, buildings, even people that poses a collision hazard.
And buildings, they don't just block signals, they affect wind too.
Oh yeah. Buildings create turbulence. Wind swirls around them, causing unpredictable gusts, something to really watch out for in urban areas.
Okay, this is good foundational stuff. Let's maybe tackle some trickier scenarios now. Flying from a ridge with like a big drop-off. How does the altitude rule work there?
That really tests your understanding of AGL. Remember, it's 122 meters above the ground directly below. So if you launch from a ridge and fly out over that drop,
flying 122 meters above my launch point could put me way higher than 122 meters above the ground below.
Precisely. You have to be constantly aware of the terrain underneath the drone, not just where you launched from.
And those tall radio antennas you sometimes see, maybe with no height marked, how do you handle those?
Best practice. Be conservative. Estimate the height visually. Give it a very wide berth vertically. Stay well below where you think the top might be. Don't take chances.
This loops back to return to home. We said valleys can mess it up, but how else can terrain fool the RTH function?
Okay, imagine you set your RTH altitude based on the flat ground where you launched. But between the drone and home, there's a hill or a line of tall trees.
The drone might not climb high enough on its way back.
Exactly. It could fly right into that obstacle because its programmed altitude wasn't sufficient for the entire return path. You got to visualize that whole route.
And underestimating wind in sheltered spots, like behind buildings or trees.
Yeah, it feels calm where you are, but step out from behind that building or climb just 50 feet, and the wind could be much stronger. You need a bigger picture, not just your immediate spot.
Last one, on sites. Flying near forests with uneven ground. Any specific tips?
Forests are tricky. Variable canopy height, hidden dips. Using a geofence, a virtual boundary, can be really helpful. It stops you accidentally flying too far or into unseen terrain, and just super high visual awareness. Constantly scanning that forest edge, looking for changes in elevation.
Okay, good site assessment is key. But sometimes things still go wrong in the air. Let's talk flyaways and malfunctions.
Right, the dreaded flyaway. Let's define that first.
Okay, what is it exactly?
Basically, it's when your drone just stops responding to your controls and flies off on its own path. Unintentional loss of control.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
And what's a really common cause of drone malfunctions in general? Something pilots see often.
Battery issues are pretty high on the list. Failure due to age, damage, overheating. It's a major cause of problems mid-flight.
So if your drone starts acting weird, ignoring commands, maybe it's a flyaway, what's the first thing you should do?
Okay, try not to panic. First instinct should be to hit return to home if it's set up and seems safe, or use the emergency stop if your controller has one and the situation warrants it. And crucially, you need to report significant incidents.
Right. But prevention is better. What's a key thing to do regularly to avoid malfunctions?
Keep that firmware updated. Manufacturers release updates to fix bugs, improve performance, add safety features. It's really important.
And before every single flight, that calibration step.
Compass calibration, absolutely vital, especially if you've traveled or are near metal. It prevents magnetic interference messing up your drone's direction sense.
Okay, specific triggers. What could cause a flyaway right at takeoff?
Taking off before you have a solid GPS lock. The drone needs that lock to know where it is and where home is for RTH. Without it, it's easily confused.
Makes sense. What if you get airborne but immediately notice it's drifting or not responding right?
Land. Immediately and safely. Then recalibrate. Something's not right with the sensors or calibration if it's drifting uncommanded right after takeoff.
And if a motor just quits mid-flight, that's clearly a
malfunction.
Yeah.
A critical hardware failure, yeah.
We touched on this with site assessment, EMF, near power lines. That can cause problems during the flight, too.
Absolutely. Electromagnetic fields from power lines can disrupt the drone's electronics. It's why you monitor telemetry, listen to the motors.
What should you be listening for?
Irregular sounds, straining noises, anything different from the usual hum. And watch that telemetry battery voltage, signal strength. Look for sudden drops or fluctuations.
Okay, so you're flying and you suspect a compass error. Is there anything you can do?
If your drone has an ADTI mode or manual mode, switching to that can sometimes help. It bypasses some of the reliance on the compass and GPS for stability, giving you more direct control.
Good tip. Now, reporting. When is it absolutely mandatory to report a malfunction to Transport Canada?
It's mandatory if the malfunction caused damage to property other than your drone, or if it posed any risk to people. Even if no one got hurt, if there was a risk, it needs reporting.
And back to GPS loss flyaways, the key prevention steps again.
Wait for that full GPS lock before takeoff, and always confirm the home point is set correctly on your map. Gives the drone its best chance to get back if needed.
What if the drone suddenly climbs or descends without you telling it to?
That often points to a sensor issue. Could be the barometer, which measures altitude, or another sensor giving bad data.
And just to hammer it home, firmware updates. Neglecting them is a risk factor for flyaways.
Definitely. Outdated firmware can have bugs that cause unpredictable flight, instability, or, even a complete flyaway. Keep it current.
Okay, let's dig into some tougher diagnostic situations. Your drone's drifting, but the weather's fine. GPS lock looks solid. What else could be going on?
Could still be subtle magnetic interference you can't see. Or maybe an internal issue, a conflict between sensors, or maybe the IMU needs recalibration. It gets tricky.
And what if that firmware update causes a problem? Like a new bug makes it fly weirdly?
Right, that can happen. First, report it to the manufacturer and Transport Canada. It's a safety issue. And then ground that drone. Don't fly it until there's a fix or clear guidance.
After a flight where you think something went wrong, how do you confirm it? How do you investigate?
Flight logs and telemetry data are your best friends. Download them, review them carefully. They show sensor readings, control inputs, error messages. That data usually holds the clues.
Worst nightmare scenario. Drone reboots midair, starts flying erratically. Immediate action.
Priority 1. Try to regain control or get it down safely, fast. Hit RTH or emergency land if you can. Watch it closely. But honestly, be prepared for the possibility you might lose it if it's truly uncontrollable.
And finally, for flyaways specifically, when must you report it to Transport Canada?
Mandatory reporting if the drone is lost, not recovered, or if the flyaway incident posed any risk whatsoever to people or property on the ground. Even if nothing was hit, the risk triggers the reporting requirement.
Okay, let's assume we landed safely. Now, what about storing the equipment? Seems simple, but I guess there are best practices.
Absolutely. Proper storage extends the life of your gear and keeps it safe. First thing, batteries. Should they stay in the drone?
I'm guessing no.
Definitely not. Always remove them for storage. And what charge level should they be at for storage?
Somewhere in the middle, right? Not full, not empty, like 40 to 60%.
Exactly. That 40-50% range is the sweet spot for lipo health during storage and the general storage environment.
Cool, dry, dust-free. Makes sense. Protect the electronics.
Yep. And clean the drone before storing, even if it looks clean.
Good habit.
Yeah, it gets rid of subtle dust or moisture that can cause issues over time. And definitely avoid heat and direct sunlight, right?
For sure. Bad for electronics, bad for batteries.
Okay, moving beyond basics. Those hard-shell cases with foam. What's the big advantage?
Protection, mostly. Against bumps and vibration during transport.
Exactly. Impact protection is key. And the foam stops things rattling around, damaging each other.
And humidity, you mentioned dry storage. Why is humidity such a problem?
Corrosion. Moisture gets into the electronics on the drone, the controller. Causes gradual damage, potential malfunctions later on.
What about the controller itself? Any special storage prep?
Powered off, obviously.
Right.
Protect the screen, maybe a protector or face down on soft foam. A padded spot in the case is ideal.
If you know you won't fly for a while, long-term storage, any extra steps?
Yeah, give everything a good clean. Battery out, stored separately at that 40-60% charge. Do a final visual inspection for any wear or damage before packing it away.
And LiPo battery storage fire risk is real? What's the safe way?
Fire-safe LiPo bags or containers. They're designed to contain a fire if a battery has a thermal runaway. Highly recommended safety item.
What about keeping gear in a car temporarily? Any warning?
Yeah. Big warnings. Avoid temperature extremes. Don't leave it in a hot trunk in summer or freezing temps in winter. Direct sunlight through windows is bad too. Damages batteries and electronics.
And should you check on stored gear periodically?
Good idea, yeah. Maybe monthly or before using it after a long break. Just check for battery swelling, any physical damage that might have occurred.
We know the storage charge is 40-60%. What happens if you just leave LiPos fully charged for ages?
Bad for them. It accelerates degradation, reduces capacity and lifespan, increases the risk of swelling too.
Keeping an inventory of parts, Seems like a good idea.
Very helpful. You know what you have. It's condition. Helps spot if something's missing before you head out. Prevents delays.
And small bits like props, accessories. Toss them in the case.
Better to keep them separate if you can. Pouches, specific compartments. Prevents them getting scratched, bent, or damaged by the bigger components.
Okay, getting into slightly more complex storage issues. What if you put away a drone that's still a bit damp?
Risk of internal corrosion again. Moisture trapped inside is bad news. Could even lead to mold in humid environments. Serious problems down the line.
Yikes. Okay, scenario. You find a battery stored near heat, and it looks a bit puffed up. What do?
Puff battery. Danger sign. Immediately isolate it. Put it somewhere safe, non-flammable, away from anything else. Do not use it or charge it. Then, find a certified battery recycling place for proper disposal.
Storing drones indoors over winter. Any tips?
Keep them in a temperature-controlled room. Avoid big temperature swings or cold drafts. Stability is key for the electronics and batteries.
What about just putting LiPos in a plain metal box? Seems protective, but...
Actually, quite risky. Uninsulated metal box. Battery terminals could touch the metal, cause a short circuit. And if one did catch fire, the box could contain the pressure and make it worse. Not recommended.
Last one. For people running multiple drones, like a fleet, how do you ensure proper storage across the board?
Best practice. Checklists. A detailed storage checklist for everything. And assign responsibility. Maybe someone does weekly checks of the storage area to make sure procedures are followed. Accountability helps.
Okay, gear is stored safely. Let's switch to the skies, understanding NOTAMs and coordinating with NAV Canada.
Right, crucial stuff for flying legally and safely. NOTAMs first, notice to air missions. What are they? In simple terms, for a drone pilot.
They're basically alerts for pilots, right? About temporary restrictions, hazards, airspace changes.
Exactly. Time-sensitive info you won't find on standard charts. For us, they often mean temporary flight restrictions, closed airspace, or maybe warnings about other aerial activity like air shows or construction cranes.
Where's the best place for us drone pilots in Canada to check these NOTAMs? Is there an official app?
Transport Canada recommends the NAD Drone app. It pulls in relevant NOTAMs and shows them on the map, which is super helpful for visualizing restrictions in your flight area.
And the main authority managing Canadian airspace?
That's ND Canada. They run the air navigation system. They're the ones you usually need to get authorization from if you want to fly in controlled airspace.
So if I do need that authorization, how do I ask for it?
Again, NAV Drone is the primary tool. You submit your flight request through the app, location, time, altitude, all that, and it goes directly to NE Canada.
How much impact do NOTAMs really have? Can I just skim them?
Definitely not skim. They need careful reading. A NOTAM can completely prohibit your flight in a certain area at a certain time. Ignoring one can lead to serious trouble, fines, losing your certificate.
Okay, common situations. Flying near an airport, say, within 3 nautical miles. What's the rule?
Inside 3 nautical miles of certified airport, you absolutely need authorization from NE Canada. No exceptions. It's a critical safety zone.
What if I see a NOTAM about forest fire suppression? What does that mean for me?
It means stay away. There's aerial firefighting happening, water bombers, helicopters. A temporary flight restriction, TFR, will be in place. Flying your drone there is incredibly dangerous and illegal. It hinders their work.
So the big takeaway is check NOTAMs before every single flight. No skipping.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Airspace status can change fast.
Yeah.
A NOTAM could pop up just hours before your flight. You need the latest information every time you fly.
We hear about airspace classes near big airports like Class C, which classes usually require NAV Canada approval for drones.
Class C airspace around major airports definitely requires NAV Canada authorization. Depending on the specifics, other controlled airspace like Class D might also require it. Always check the classification for your area.
And if someone ignores a NOTAM, flies in a restricted zone anyway, what happens?
Big penalties from Transport Canada. Fines can be substantial. You could lose your pilot certificate. It's taken very seriously.
When using NAV drone to request airspace access, what info do they need?
Typically, the planned date and time, exact location, the maximum altitude you want to fly at, and your contact details so they can reach you.
NOTAMs themselves look like code sometimes. Is there a standard format?
Yeah, it's a coded text format using abbreviations. Looks cryptic at first. It includes location, active times, and what the restriction or hazard is. NAV Drone helps decode them, but learning common aviation abbreviations helps too.
Besides NAV drone, how else can I check if I'm in controlled airspace?
VFR navigation charts are the official source. They show all the airspace boundaries and classifications. NAV drone often overlays this info on its map too, which is convenient.
What about CYR airspace, Canadian restricted airspace? Who do I ask for permission there?
For CYR areas, you need to contact the specific controlling agency listed for that zone. It could be the Department of National Defense or sometimes Transport Canada, depending on why it's restricted. The chart tells you who controls it.
Tricky one. I check NOTAMs near an airport, find nothing active for my time. But I know it's Class C airspace. Am I good to go?
No, absolutely not. Even with no active NOTAM, the Class C classification itself means you need NAV Canada authorization. The underlying airspace rules still apply.
Okay, let's get into some tougher NOTAM interpretations. A NOTAM mentions a UAV exclusion zone active from 1200Z to 1800Z. What's the Z?
Z stands for Zulu time, which is Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. So you need to convert those UTC times to your local time to know when the exclusion zone is actually active where you are. You can't fly your drone, UAV, there during that window.
I submitted my flight request via NAV drone but haven't heard back. Can I assume it's approved?
No, definitely not. Silence is not approval. You need explicit confirmation and authorization from Navy Canada before you can fly in controlled airspace. No response means no permission.
I see a NOTAM. CYR123, active daily 1300-2000Z. My flight is planned for 1400Z near CYR123. What do I do?
Since 1400Z falls right within that active period, 1300Z, 2000Z, you cannot fly in or near CYR123 at that time. You either need to reschedule your flight for outside those hours or choose a completely different location. Flying in active restricted airspace is a serious violation.
After checking NOTAMs and getting authorization, any extra safety steps I could take, especially near airports?
If you have the gear and know-how, monitoring the local aviation radio frequency can give you real-time awareness of manned aircraft. Some pilots might even try to quickly reconfirm their authorization with ATC just before flight, if practical. Extra awareness is always good.
And why is NOTAM awareness super critical in areas with emergency responses, like rescues or fires?
Because manned aircraft, helicopters, water bombers will be operating often at low altitudes and unpredictably. A drone in that airspace is a massive hazard. It interferes with life-saving work and could cause a mid-air collision. NOTAMs for these areas are absolute no-fly zones for drones.
Okay, airspace navigated. Now, the what-if scenario, emergency landings, what's the absolute top priority?
Protecting people and property on the ground, period. Nothing else matters as much.
So even if it means wrecking the drone, never risk hitting someone or someone's house?
Never. The drone is replaceable. People and property damage are far more serious. Safety first, always.
Most drones have emergency features, right? Like a quick way down.
Yeah, many have an emergency stop or a rapid descent command you can trigger from the controller. Good to know where yours is.
After an emergency landing, even if nothing seems broken, should I log it?
Yes, always log any emergency landing. Record what happened. Reviewing it later can help you figure out why it happened and maybe prevent it next time.
If you have a choice, where should you try to land in an emergency?
Aim for an open area. An empty field, unoccupied grass, somewhere clear of people, buildings, roads, power lines, any hazards.
So pre-flight planning should include thinking about where you could land in an emergency.
Absolutely. Good practice is to identify potential emergency landing zones, SLZs, during your site survey. Having those spots picked out saves precious seconds if something goes wrong.
Okay, scenario. Motor failure mid-flight. What's the action?
Initiate an emergency landing immediately in the safest, nearest suitable spot. Use whatever control you still have to guide it down.
What about losing GPS near power lines? That sounds really bad.
Very high risk. Land immediately, but well clear of the lines. Don't rely on GPS returning. Manually fly it down somewhere safe, quickly.
Forced choice. Land over water or over a road with cars, which is usually less bad.
Generally, water is considered less hazardous if it's safe to do so. No boats, swimmers, environmental risk. Landing on a road with moving traffic is extremely dangerous, high risk of causing an accident. Water is usually the better gamble if those are your only options.
When do I have to report an emergency landing to Transport Canada?
Mandatory reporting if it results in any injury to a person or any damage to property other than the drone itself.
What's a really common reason for emergency landings related to the drone itself?
Critically low battery. Running out of juice mid-flight highlights the need to constantly monitor that battery level.
If I have a visual observer with me, what's their role during an emergency landing?
They keep eyes on the drone, call out its path, warn about hazards in the landing zone, and alert any people nearby to get clear. They're an extra set of eyes focused on safety.
And if the landing does damage someone's property, fence, roof, whatever,
You need to report it to Transport Canada because property was damaged, and you absolutely need to inform the property owner about what happened.
can good pre-flight checks reduce the chance of needing an emergency landing?
Definitely. Thorough hardware checks, looking for damage, checking battery health, plus assessing weather properly. All these things reduce the risk of something failing mid-flight.
During that emergency descent, specific things to avoid landing near.
Stay away from roads, power lines, groups of people. Aim for the clearest, most isolated spot you can reach. Minimize additional risks.
Okay, tougher situations. You're getting bad signal interference, drones acting weird, safest move.
Initiate a controlled descent right away. Don't wait for total loss of control. Try to guide it towards one of those pre-identified safe landing zones while you still have some command.
Emergency landing choice. Near a kid's playground or next to a fence in an open field.
Fence line in the open field. Always avoid areas where people, especially children, are likely to be. The playground is a much higher risk area.
Drones start spinning wildly, maybe an IMU failure. What do you do?
Hit the emergency stop if you have one. Then try to get it down immediately in the safest open space nearby. That kind of instability is critical.
After an emergency landing, what kind of documentation might be needed besides just a basic log entry?
You might need to record the exact date, time, GPS coordinates of landing, save any telemetry data from the flight, and write a detailed summary of what happened and why the emergency landing was necessary.
Flying in cities makes emergency landings harder. Any planning tips for urban areas?
Meticulous pre-planning is key. Map out potential SLZ's rooftops, if accessible and safe, small parks, maybe quiet parking lots. Identify multiple options along your flight path so you have backups if your first choice isn't clear.
Okay, planning and checklists. Seems basic, but crucial for safety. What are the main phases for using checklists in drone flights?
3 key phases: pre-flight before you launch, in-flight checks during the operation, and post-flight after you land.
And flight logs. How long do I need to keep those records?
Regulations say you need to keep flight records for at least 12 months after the date of the last flight in that log.
And VLOS, just to be sure everyone remembers.
Visual line of sight, keeping your eyes directly on the drone unaided the entire time it's flying.
So what's the main point of using checklists? What do they help prevent?
Human error, basically.
Yeah.
They're a systematic way to make sure you don't forget critical steps, reduces risk, increases safety.
Can I just run through the checks in my head, or does it need to be written down?
Transport Canada requires a written checklist. Mental checks are okay, but a physical or digital list you actually go through is the standard and the requirement.
Give me one absolutely essential pre-flight checklist item.
Checking battery levels, both the drone battery and the remote controller battery. Got to have enough power for the whole flight plus reserve.
What about firmware updates? If I see one is available right before a flight?
Best practice is to install it, then check everything works correctly before you fly. Flying with outdated firmware can introduce risks if there were known bugs fixed in the update.
During planning, how do I confirm if my flight area is controlled or uncontrolled airspace?
Best ways are checking current VFR navigation charts or using the NAV drone app. It usually overlays airspace classifications on its map.
And a key post-flight check after landing.
Thoroughly inspect the drone for any new damaged props, body, camera, and log the flight details accurately in your records right away.
What happens if I just don't use checklists? What's the risk?
Much higher chance of making a mistake. Forgetting a crucial check, missing damage, maybe even flying illegally if you forget an airspace check. Plus, it's non-compliance with regulations.
Should my flight plan include thinking about emergencies? What kind?
Yes, definitely. Think about signal loss, flyaway, battery failure. Having a basic plan for how you'd react helps you respond better if it actually happens.
Why bother recording the weather conditions during planning?
Provides context. If something unusual happens during the flight, knowing the weather, wind, temp, visibility, helps understand if it was a factor. Good for troubleshooting or incident analysis.
So overall, how do checklists really make drone flying safer?
They ensure consistency. Every critical item gets checked every time. Reduces oversights, catches potential equipment issues before they cause an accident, standardizes the process.
Who's ultimately responsible for making sure checklists are used correctly for a flight?
The pilot in command. Always. They are responsible for the safe operation, and that includes using checklists properly.
If I'm flying somewhere totally new, what's one critical thing to verify in my pre-flight plan?
Airspace classification for sure. And identify local hazards, power lines, tall antennas, nearby airports or heliports, restricted zones, things you wouldn't know just by looking around.
Okay, let's get into some harder checklist questions. If a Transport Canada inspector asks for proof I use checklists, what do I need to show them?
You'd need your written checklist template, the list itself. And they might ask to see completed checklists from recent flights, proving you're actually using it, not just having it.
What if an emergency happens that I didn't plan for at all? What might that say about my planning?
It might suggest the planning wasn't thorough enough. A good plan tries to anticipate reasonably foreseeable emergencies based on the flight, location, and equipment.
I flew in controlled airspace but forgot to log it. Which specific rule did I likely break?
You've violated the CAR's requirement for maintaining accurate flight records and keeping them for 12 months. Failure to log means the record doesn't exist.
How do I update checklists if I change my drone gear, new battery type, new sensor?
You must review and update your checklist to match the new equipment. Add checks for the new stuff. Remove or change checks for the old stuff. Make sure the checklist accurately reflects your current setup.
Scenario: mid-air battery failure. Looking back, I think I missed a warning sign before takeoff. What pre-flight check did I likely skip?
Probably a thorough battery check, checking its voltage, physical condition, any swelling. Maybe its charge cycle history, if your system tracks that. A good battery check aims to catch potential failures before flight.
Okay, flight's done, checklist complete. Let's talk battery recovery and inspection after landing.
Right. First step before touching the battery.
Power the drone completely off.
Always. Safety first.
Yeah.
Prevents accidental motor starts or shorts.
Battery feels warm after flight. Charge it right away.
Better to let it cool down to ambient temperature first. Charging a hot battery can shorten its life and increase risk.
What's the most obvious visual sign a LiPo battery might be damaged and unsafe?
Swelling or puffing. That's a clear indicator of internal problems. Treat it with extreme caution.
What if the battery casing is cracked? Still okay to use?
No way. Cracked casing means potential internal damage, risk of failure, or fire. It needs safe disposal.
Speaking of disposal, how do I get rid of old drone batteries? Trash? Okay.
Absolutely not. LiPos need proper recycling. Take them to an approved battery recycling facility or collection point.
Yeah.
Don't put them in household waste.
For long-term storage, the charge level again, and where should they be kept?
40–60% charge level. And ideally, store them inside a fire-resistant LiPo bag or container for safety.
After a flight, what physical checks should I do on the battery itself?
Look for excessive heat, any swelling, puffing, cracks, punctures, leaks, or corrosion on the terminals. Any of those are red flags.
If I have multiple batteries, should I rotate their use? Why?
Yeah, rotating them is good practice. It spreads the wear and tear evenly, helps extend their overall life, and might help you spot a weakening battery sooner.
When should I decide to quarantine a battery after a flight?
Quarantine it immediately if it's puffed, physically damaged, or behaved weirdly during flight or charging, like getting super hot fast. Keep it separate and safe.
What's the risk of using a battery I suspect has internal damage, even if it looks okay?
Big risk. Could fail suddenly in flight, causing a crash, or it could lead to a thermal runaway fire or explosion. Not worth the gamble.
Battery feels warm but not crazy hot after landing. Still wait to charge.
Yeah, best practice is still to let it cool fully to room temp before charging. It's just gentler on the battery chemistry long term.
What battery info should I log post-flight?
Flight duration on that specific battery. Battery ID if you track them. And its condition, normal, warm, any issues noted.
Why shouldn't I immediately try to fast charge a battery that's been run down really low, like almost dead?
Deeply discharged LiPos can become unstable. Jamming a high current into them right away can sometimes cause internal damage or even a thermal event. A slower initial charge might be safer.
Does the outside air temperature affect how I judge battery warmth after flight?
Yes, definitely. On a hot day, a normal battery will feel warmer than on a cold day. So you need to factor in the ambient temperature when deciding if it's unusually hot.
Storing the drone, can I just leave the battery plugged in?
No. Always remove it. Store the battery separately, at storage charge, in a safe container. We covered that in storage, but it bears repeating for batteries specifically.
Okay, more complex battery stuff. I find a battery that's just slightly puffed, but it's not hot or leaking. What now?
Even slight puffing means internal gas buildup. It's compromised. Quarantine it immediately safe place, away from flammables. Monitor it closely. Don't use or charge it. Best bet is safe disposal via recycling.
How does careless post-flight handling affect battery safety long-term?
Things like storing fully charged, exposing to heat, not inspecting for damage, they all increase the long-term risk of internal shorts, fires, or just premature failure. Good habits matter.
Storing LiPos fully charged? How long before it's really bad? A few days? A week?
Even just a few days at 100% starts stressing the chemistry. After maybe a week or so, the risk of degradation and swelling really increases. Best to get it down to storage voltage, around 40–60% if you're not flying again within a day or two.
I flew in freezing weather. Afterwards, the battery voltage seems really slow to recover to its resting level. What could that mean?
Slow recovery after cold use could indicate some internal damage caused by the cold. Cold reduces performance temporarily, but if recovery is unusually slow and persists, the battery might have suffered permanent harm. Monitor it very carefully, maybe retire it.
If there is a battery incident fire, major failure, what records might authorities or insurance want?
They might ask for battery usage logs, purchase records, maintenance history if relevant, maybe even photos, and definitely records of how you disposed of it if it was damaged. Thorough logs are your evidence.
Okay, batteries handled. Now, a super critical topic, avoiding manned aircraft. Planes, helicopters.
Absolutely top priority safety item. No room for error here. The first rule?
Manned aircraft always have the right of way.
Always. 100% of the time. No exceptions. Planes, helicopters, gliders, balloons. They own the sky relative to drones.
So if I see one coming, my job is?
Yield immediately. Get the drone out of the way. Usually means descending and landing quickly and safely.
What about emergency helicopters? Police, air ambulance?
They get even more priority. Give them very wide berth, land immediately, don't interfere with their critical missions in any way.
So right of way for a drone pilot means?
It means you never have it. You always give way. See and avoid is your constant responsibility. Proactively stay clear.
I hear a plane, but can't see it. Maybe clouds or trees. Safe to keep flying?
No, absolutely not. Sound means it's close. If you can't see it, you don't know its path. Land or descend immediately as a precaution until you can visually confirm it's clear.
How can I actively look and listen for other aircraft while flying?
Best way is using a dedicated visual observer, VO. Their only job is scanning the sky and listening while you focus on flying. It's often required and always a good idea.
A helicopter pops up unexpectedly, flying low nearby. What do I do?
Land, fast and safe. If landing isn't instantly possible, get the drone down very low and hold position until the helicopter is well clear.
Are there specific places I should be extra careful about manned aircraft?
Definitely near airports, heliports, known flight paths. Also, areas where low-level operations happen, like agricultural areas, or near hospitals with helipads.
Wildfires, water bombers flying low. Can I fly my drone anywhere near that?
Never, ever. Strictly prohibited and incredibly dangerous. You interfere with firefighting, risk collision, stay completely clear of any wildfire area with air operations.
My drone's at 100 meters AGL. I spot a small plane nearby. What's the move?
Descend. Immediately. Land if possible or get down very low and hover until it passes safely. Doesn't matter if you think you're clear, give way.
If I plan to fly near an aerodrome, what kind of procedures should I have ready?
You need pre-planned emergency procedures specifically for avoiding aircraft. Clear communication plan with your VO, defined emergency landing spots away from flight paths, clear steps for evasive maneuvers.
What kinds of manned aircraft might I realistically see below the drone ceiling of 122 meters, 400 feet?
Helicopters often fly low. Police, news, medical. Agricultural planes doing crop dusting fly very low too. Don't assume everything is above you.
If I'm working with a VO, how should we communicate about spotting aircraft?
Communication needs to be instant, clear, and concise. VO calls out type, direction, approximate altitude. Pilot acknowledges immediately and states the evasive action being taken. Closed-loop communication.
Why is it dangerous to just assume all planes and helicopters stay above 400 feet?
Because it's just not true. Many operate below that, legally and routinely. Assuming they'll be higher could lead you to not see or react to one that's at your altitude or below. Very dangerous assumption.
Can I fly my drone if there's a NOTAM restricting airspace for an air rescue?
Absolutely not. Those NOTAMs create protected zones for critical operations. Drones are strictly forbidden to ensure the safety and effectiveness of the rescue effort.
Okay, more complex aircraft avoidance. I hear a helicopter but can't see it, trees in the way. What do I do?
Reduce altitude immediately. Get lower, prepare to land. The sound means it's close. Removing your drone from potential conflict is the safest bet, even without visual confirmation.
I'm flying 1.5 nautical miles from a registered heliport. Do I need AV Canada authorization for a basic drone flight?
The strict no-fly zone for basic ops is typically 1 nm around a heliport without authorization. At 1.5 nm, you're outside that immediate zone, but still very close. Extreme caution is needed. Be hypervigilant, listen carefully, be ready to land instantly. Always best to double-check specific local rules or advisories too.
Scenario. Manned aircraft enters my area low. At the same time, I lose control link with my drone. What should the drone ideally do?
Ideally, failsafe kicks in. Depending on settings, it might hover, land, or start RTH. RTH would usually involve climbing first, which might be bad here. Your priority is regaining the link ASAP to manually yield if needed. This highlights why configuring failsafe carefully matters.
Water bombers coming right at my drone during a fire. I'm already descending. What else?
Land immediately and terminate the flight. Get it on the ground and keep it there until all air operations are confirmed clear of the area. Don't just ascend, get it down and off.
Flying near a rural airstrip, I see a glider way off in the distance. Reaction.
Gliders are silent and can change altitude unexpectedly. Even if it looks far, take notice. Move your drone to a lower altitude as a precaution and monitor the glider's path carefully until it's well clear. Better safe than sorry.
Okay, aircraft hopefully avoided. Let's talk about the start and end of the flight. Launch and recovery.
Foundational skills. Before you even hit takeoff, what's that crucial step for making sure RTH works?
Get a solid GPS lock and make sure the home point is set correctly.
Exactly. That GPS lock and accurate home point are what the drone uses to find its way back. Critical pre-launch check.
What makes a good launch site? Key features.
Level, stable ground, clear of obstructions overhead and around. No trees, wires, buildings right there that you could hit on ascent.
And RTH, just to define it again in this context.
Return to home. The automated function that flies the drone back to that preset launch point, usually landing itself.
Any etiquette for launching? Like telling people nearby?
Good practice, yeah. Just a quick heads up to anyone close by that you're about to launch. Keeps everyone aware.
Safest ground surface for launch.
Dry, flat, stable. Pavement, hard dirt, short grass are usually good. Avoid soft sand, tall grass, uneven rocks where it might tip.
Are there things I should avoid launching near because they might interfere with the drone?
Yeah, large metal objects, buildings, vehicles can mess with the compass and GPS. Same for strong electromagnetic sources like power lines or transmission towers. Give them some space.
Pre-launch weather check. Besides wind and rain, what else?
Visibility got to maintain VLOS. Temperature affects batteries, and any chance of precipitation starting during your flight. Even light rain can be bad for electronics.
Sometimes the controller suggests calibrating the compass or IMU. When should I do that?
Definitely do it if prompted. Also good practice to calibrate the compass after traveling a long distance or if you're in a new area with potentially different magnetic fields. IMU calibration if flight seems unstable or if prompted.
How can I tell if my drone isn't getting a good GPS lock before takeoff?
Takes a long time to acquire satellites. Or the signal strength indicator on your controller keeps fluctuating or stays low. Don't launch if the GPS lock seems weak or unstable.
Coming in for landing safety check for the landing zone?
Visually confirm it's still clear before you start descending. People, animals, vehicles might have entered the area since you took off. Make sure it's safe to land there now.
What's the risk of launching really close to trees?
Collision on takeoff is the big one. Even a small drift can hit a branch. Plus, trees can block GPS signals right when the drone needs them most to establish its position.
Setting the RTH altitude, what's the key factor to consider?
Obstacle clearance. Set it high enough to clear everything between the drone's furthest point and the home point trees, buildings, hills along the entire return path. Don't just clear things near the launch pad.
Can I launch from a moving car or boat for basic VLOS flights?
Generally, no. Maintaining VLOS and stable control from a moving platform is extremely difficult and usually not permitted for basic operations. Creates too much instability.
An animal runs into my landing zone as I'm coming down. What do I do?
Abort the landing. Power up, ascend to a safe altitude, hover or go around. Wait until the animal is completely clear before attempting to land again, or find an alternate safe spot.
Can I choose to land somewhere different from where I took off? Why?
Yes, sometimes. Maybe you flew a long linear path and landing at the end is more efficient. Maybe weather changed at the launch site, or maybe vehicle access is better at a pre-planned recovery spot.
Okay, trickier launch recovery. Launching from a ridge, I set RTH to 30 meter above launch. Is that enough?
Probably not. 30 meters might clear obstacles right at the launch point, but the ground slopes away. The drone returning from lower down might hit the side of the ridge because 30 meters above launch isn't 30 meters above the slope it's flying over. Need to account for terrain profile.
My compass calibration keeps failing. What's the next step?
Move location. There's likely strong magnetic interference where you are. Get away from metal, power lines, buildings, and try again. If it still fails after moving, the compass itself might be faulty.
Home point is set. How can I double check it's actually accurate before takeoff?
Check the map display on your controller. It should show the H symbol right where you are physically standing. Some controllers show coordinates too, which you can verify.
Coming into land, wind suddenly gets really gusty. Safest response.
Abort the landing. Go back up to a stable hover. Assess the wind. Either wait for it to calm down, or if it stays bad, consider diverting to a more sheltered landing spot if one is safely reachable. Don't fight strong gusts close to the ground.
Why might I need to calibrate the IMU sometimes, even if it doesn't prompt me?
The IMU senses orientation and motion. A hard landing, rough transport, or big temperature shifts could potentially affect its accuracy. Calibrating ensures it's giving correct data for stable flight, even if no error is detected. Good preventative steps sometimes.
Okay, launched, flown, landed. Now, keeping that connection, VLOS and situational awareness. Remind us what VLOS means.
Visual line of sight. Being able to see the drone directly with your own eyes without binoculars or anything the entire time it's in the air.
So no binoculars allowed for VLOS.
Correct. Unaided vision only, though corrective glasses or contacts are fine. Binoculars don't count for maintaining VLOS.
If I have someone helping me watch, what's their title and job?
Visual observer, or VO. Their job is to help the pilot maintain VLOS by constantly scanning the sky and watching the drone. They don't fly it, they just watch and communicate.
What if the drone flies behind a hill for just a second, still VLOS?
Nope. Any break in visual contact, even momentary, means you've lost VLOS. It has to be continuous.
If I do lose sight of it, any tool that might help get it back in view?
Return to home, RCH can help. Activating it brings the drone back towards the launch point, hopefully back into your line of sight.
Flying along, hit a patch of fog, can't see the drone, what do I do?
Activate RTH if it's safe to do so. Or, if the air above seems clear, maybe ascend vertically to try and pop out of the fog while trying to spot it. Safety first, get it back in sight, or bring it home.
Situational awareness, why is that such a big deal in drone flying?
It's knowing everything that's going on. Where your drone is, its altitude, speed, direction, battery level, what the wind's doing, where obstacles are, any other air traffic. It's the foundation for making safe decisions.
If I'm using a VO, how should we communicate?
Clear, concise, immediate verbal communication. VO calls out drone position, potential hazards, aircraft. Pilot acknowledges and confirms actions. Needs to be effective teamwork.
Sun glare. How does that affect VLOS?
Can make it impossible to see the drone if you're looking towards the sun. Blinding glare means you've lost visual contact, lost VLOS. Big problem, especially with low sun angles.
What's the minimum visibility required for VLOS operations?
Typically 3 statute miles. If visibility is less than that, you can't reliably maintain visual contact over reasonable distances.
My drone gets far away. I can still see it as a dot, but can't tell which way it's facing. What should I do?
Bring it closer, fly it back towards you until you can clearly discern its orientation again. Losing orientation awareness is a major risk factor for loss of control.
Can I just fly using the camera feed on my screen if I can't see the drone itself? FPV style?
No, not for operations requiring VLOS. The camera view, FPV, is a tool, but it doesn't replace seeing the actual drone in the airspace with your own eyes. That's the rule.
Anything about the drone itself that makes VLOS easier?
Bright colors help. A brightly colored drone, maybe with strobe lights, is easier to track visually against different backgrounds, especially at a distance.
Can my visual observer stand behind a building while I fly?
No. The VO also needs continuous, unobstructed visual line of sight to the drone. If they're behind something, they can't fulfill their role. They need to be positioned effectively.
If a small hill briefly blocks my view, is that a VLOS violation?
Yes. Any obstruction, temporary or permanent, that breaks your direct line of sight is a violation. VLOS must be maintained without interruption.
Okay, tougher VLOS scenarios. Lose sight momentarily behind a passing truck. Immediate action.
Stop any forward sideways movement of the drone immediately. Maybe ascend slightly if clear above to try and see over the obstruction as it passes. Reacquire visual contact, ASAP.
Flying near sunrise sunset, glare is a problem. How could flight planning help?
Plan your flight path away from the sun's position. If the sun is low in the east, plan your main flat legs north, south, or west to keep it out of your direct line of sight as much as possible.
How could a small hill in an otherwise flat area mess up VLOS?
It creates a blind spot behind it. Your drone flies behind the hill relative to your position, and you lose sight, even if it's not far away horizontally. creates a VLOS shadow.
Besides fog, what other weather factor can make visually tracking the drone harder?
Strong crosswinds. The drone drifts sideways unpredictably, making it harder to follow smoothly against the background, especially if the background is cluttered.
My VO says they lost sight, but I can still see it clear as day on my screen. What must I do?
You have to stop the flight or maneuver immediately to get the drone back into the VO's line of sight, or your own direct sight. The screen view doesn't count for VLOS. If the designated spotter loses sight, you're no longer compliant.
Okay, almost there. Last major topic. Loss of control link. When the controller stops talking to the drone.
Yeah, another anxiety-inducing moment. What happens exactly?
The radio signal between controller and drone breaks. No commands get through.
Exactly. You lose control input, and often telemetry stops coming back too.
What's the drone often programmed to do when that happens?
Return to home, RTH, is the most common default fail-safe behavior. It tries to come back autonomously.
Can something like strong Wi-Fi nearby cause this?
It can, yeah. Radio frequency interference from Wi-Fi, cell towers, other strong signals can jam or overpower your control link.
So setting up fail-safe actions before flight is crucial.
Absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Deciding before you fly what the drone should do if it loses signal, RTH, hover, or land based on your environment is a key safety step.
And RTH, again, just to be crystal clear.
Return to home. Flies back to the launch point autonomously and usually lands.
When setting that RTH altitude, what's a safe minimum rule of thumb?
Set it high enough to clear all obstacles in the entire operating area and along the likely return path. Trees, buildings, hills. Don't cut it close. Err on the side of caution.
What if I lose the link and the drone doesn't start RTH? What should I try?
First, try moving your physical location. You might just be in a signal dead spot. Monitor the controller, see if the signal comes back. Check the last known GPS coordinates from telemetry if you have them. Prepare to retrieve it manually based on that last position if it doesn't return.
How does telemetry help specifically in a lost link situation?
The last known GPS coordinates it sent back are invaluable for knowing where to start looking if the drone doesn't return via RTH. It gives you a search area.
Where am I more likely to lose the control signal?
Flying behind large obstacles, buildings, hills, dense trees, or flying near the maximum stated range of your controller. Signal gets weaker with distance and obstructions.
Why is flying behind buildings or terrain so bad for the signal?
Those solid objects physically block or significantly absorb the radio waves between your controller and the drone. It's like trying to talk through a thick wall.
What if my failsafe is set to just hover? What does the drone do on signal loss?
It just stays put, hovers at its current position and altitude until the signal returns or the battery runs out. It won't come home or land automatically.
Before a long-distance flight, how can I check my signal reliability?
Do a range check. Fly out a short distance. Watch the signal strength indicator on your controller. See how it behaves. If it's dropping fast or unstable nearby, don't risk flying far.
If RTH kicks in automatically, should I just let it do its thing or try to take back control?
If the signal comes back strongly and you assess it's safe to do so, you can retake manual control. Might allow for a better landing or avoiding something near the home point. But if unsure, letting the automated RTH complete is often the safer default.
If I lose the link, but the drone comes back fine via RTH, should I just forget about it?
No, definitely log it. Note when and where it happened. It might indicate an intermittent issue with gear or interference in that specific spot. Good data to have.
Okay, more complex lost link issues. Drone loses signal, doesn't RTH. What environmental cause besides physical blockage?
Strong electromagnetic interference, EMI. High power radio sources, certain industrial equipment. They can actively jam your signal even without a physical object in the way.
We talked about setting RTH altitude high enough. What's the danger if it's set too low?
Collision during the return flight. It flies right into that tree or building that's taller than the programmed RTH altitude. Very common cause of RTH crashes.
If failsafe is set to land on signal loss, what's the risk in a busy city?
It could land somewhere really bad. On a busy road, private property, a crowded park, creates a hazard on the ground. RTH or hover might be safer failsafes in urban areas.
Lost link, drone starts descending towards an unsafe area. Best immediate action.
Try desperately to regain the link by moving. If you get it back, immediately override the descent and fly it somewhere safer to land manually. Regaining control is paramount.
What if my drone loses signal and flies into restricted airspace accidentally before I get it back? What are my obligations?
You must report that airspace incursion to Transport Canada promptly. Explain what happened, the signal loss, the unintentional entry. They'll likely investigate and may require corrective actions.
Phew, okay. Final topic, logging flight and maintenance data. Seems dull, but it's required, right?
Required and important. How long do flight logs need to be kept?
12 months, from the date of the last flight in the log.
And format. Fancy software needed.
Nope, paper logs are fine as long as they have all the required info.
What info is required after every flight?
Date, time, location, pilot's name, the drone's ID, serial number, and flight duration.
Is it just flights or maintenance too?
Maintenance logs are also required. Gotta track repairs, updates, component swaps.
What about weird stuff during flight? Near miss, weird warning. Log it. Yes, definitely log any incidents or abnormalities, even if no damage occurred. Good for tracking potential issues.
What details go in a maintenance log entry?
Date, what work was done, calibration, repair, update version, any parts replaced, part numbers if possible, and who did the work.
Where should I keep these logs?
Somewhere safe, secure, but easily accessible for you to check or show an inspector. Backups are a good idea too.
Replacing a broken prop, does that need a maintenance log entry?
Yes. Prop replacement is maintenance. Log the date and what was replaced.
Are digital logs okay? Apps or software?
Yep, digital logs are fine as long as they contain all the required info and you can produce them if asked.
Who's responsible for keeping these logs accurate?
The pilot in command. Always. Their responsibility.
What happens if an inspector asks for logs and I don't have them, or they're messy?
Penalties. Fines, warnings, potentially suspension or loss of your pilot certificate. They take record keeping seriously.
Besides rules, any other benefits to good logs?
Troubleshooting. If the drone acts up, logs help diagnose. Also useful for insurance claims, proof of maintenance, and flight history.
Drone has a rough landing, looks okay, but still log it.
Yes, log any hard landing or incident. Even if no damage is visible, it might cause internal issues later. Creates a history.
Maintenance record retention period, same as flight logs.
Yes, also 12 months minimum from the date of the maintenance activity.
When should I make maintenance log entries? Right away.
Best practice is immediately after the work is done, or right after a pre-flight check if you find and fix something then. Don't wait and forget details.
Okay, complex logging. Firmware update causes problems. What do I log?
Maintenance log, firmware version, date, flight log. Describe the problem behavior when it happened, impact on flight. Be specific.
Unexpected RTH activation. How to log that thoroughly.
Note the time, GPS coords if possible, battery status, any error messages, and your suspected cause. For example, signal interference.
Drone overheats mid-flight. What details to log?
Log the conditions, hot day, any warnings received, and crucially, what you did as the pilot. Landed, changed flight pattern.
Flying multiple drones. How do I keep logs straight?
Separate logs for each drone. Clearly label each logbook, flight maintenance, with the specific drone's serial number or ID. No mixing history.
Can I log several very short flights in one session as one entry?
You can, but only if all required details for each individual flight are clearly recorded within that single entry. Start 10 times per flight, durations, locations if different, battery used per flight, etc. Clarity is key.
Wow, that was a lot. We really covered the ground or the air on those practice questions.
We certainly did, from planning on the ground to handling things in the air, dealing with rules, and wrapping up post-flight. It's a comprehensive picture.
And hopefully for you listening, this deep dive gives you that solid overview of what's critical for safe, legal drone ops in Canada. We tried to hit the key points without getting lost in the weeds.
Right. It's about being informed and prepared. So, considering everything we've talked about, the regulations, the best practices, it makes you think, doesn't it?
About what specifically?
Well, in a field that changes as fast as drone tech and rules do, how do pilots really stay on top of continuous learning? How do they make sure they're always current with the latest safety guidelines? And maybe, what are the best ways for pilots to stay informed and keep that professional edge sharp in this industry?
That's a great thought to end on, something for everyone to consider as they move forward. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.